How to Stay Invisible. Chapter 23. On Monday, Harlan sat down at breakfast grinning. He was back in his regular attire, NASCAR t-shirt and blue jeans, but he seemed different, more confident, definitely more cheerful than usual, and just as chatty. But that last song was a good one. He finished a long story about the dance and the DJ and took a sip of his milk. A group of girls walked past the table and Harlan waved, smiling from ear to ear. After they passed, he looked at Raymond. "Where'd you go anyway? After the dance?" Raymond shook his head. "I just had to get out of there." Harlan gave him a knowing look. "Yeah," he said, taking a bite of his donut and talking with his mouth full. "I saw Lexi dancing with Joseph. Sorry, man. But after the dance, when we were all out waiting outside to get picked up, I saw him try to talk to her again and she just ignored him, left him standing there by himself while she talked to her friends." Raymond was about to tell his friend how happy those words had made him. But before he had the chance, the same troop of girls passed again, carrying breakfast trays now. "Hey, Harlan," a girl called. Harlan grinned and said, "Hello, Samantha." "Ladies," he nodded, as cool as a movie star. Raymond sat staring at Harlan. Harlan tried to feign indifference. Then he stuffed the rest of the donut in his mouth, smearing powdered sugar across his cheek. "What, do I have something on my face?" Harlan asked, trying to rub off the sugar. What just happened?" Raymond said, gesturing to the group of girls that had just passed. "Oh, that." Harlan shrugged and grinned his biggest grin of all. "I guess I made some new friends at the dance." The girls giggled from 2 tables over. "I guess you did," Raymond said, smiling back at his friend. After a few minutes, Harlan looked around to make sure nobody was listening and leaned forward. "My gran says we're going to see my dad this week and I'll miss a couple of days of school." Harlan definitely sounded optimistic to Raymond. Raymond didn't have much faith in parents, but he hoped beyond hope that everything would turn out okay for Harlan and his dad. "How far is Commerce anyway?" Raymond asked. He didn't think it could be that far because he had heard other kids talking about going there all the time. Before Harlan could answer, Lexi sat down in the empty chair next to Raymond. "Hi," she said, and took a bite of her donut. "Hi," said Raymond, his spirits brightening. "Can I eat breakfast here?" Lexi asked. Raymond had only seen Lexi eating breakfast in the cafeteria on a few occasions, and she usually sat with her friends. Raymond grinned. "Sure, fine with us. Right, Harlan?" He looked at Harlan, who nodded, suddenly speechless. "What were you guys talking about?" Lexi asked. Harlan gave Raymond a look. "Nothing," Raymond said. "Harlan was telling me about the recent change in the NASCAR lineup." Raymond wasn't sure if he was talking gibberish or not, but sounded good to him. "The new driver for 36? Lexi asked, and Harlan nearly spit his milk across the table. Lexi pretended not to notice. "He's a rookie out of Louisiana," she continued, "but his numbers are good. I think he'll definitely mix things up this season." Raymond thought Harlan might fall out of his chair. "You know NASCAR?" Harlan gawked. "I follow my favorite drivers. Who doesn't?" Lexi shrugged. Harlan looked over at Raymond, and Raymond couldn't help but laugh. Lexi and Harlan spent the rest of breakfast discussing the new rookie and the lineup for the professional teams. Raymond finished his breakfast in silence. Neither of his friends asked him for his thoughts on the subject, and he didn't mind one bit. Lexi was already in science when Raymond got to class. Before Raymond could say anything, Joseph Banker sat down and cut Raymond off. "Hey, Lexi," he said in a voice that was way too sweet coming from him. "I had a good time at the dance on Friday." Lexi smiled politely. Then she turned to Raymond. "Did you start ratios and math today, Raymond?" Joseph snapped his mouth shut, eyeing Raymond. Raymond was about to answer, but he was cut off again. "What did you do? Sleep in the dirt?" Joseph asked in his usual snide tone. Raymond ran his fingers through his hair. A piece of a leaf fell out and floated to the table. Raymond blushed, flicking it off the table. "Must have been there all morning." Lexi glared at Joseph but didn't say anything. Any confidence that Raymond had when he sat down had vanished. He sat quietly, trying not to make eye contact with Lexi. Mr. Rosen began his lecture on the circulatory system and handed out diagrams for them to follow along and take notes. Raymond worked quietly, trying to ignore the feeling that Lexi was watching him. Finally, at the end of class, Lexi asked, "Do you want to meet me after school this week? Maybe you could help me with that ratio stuff that Mr. Brewer assigned. I feel like my eyes are crossing." "Sure," he said. "I can meet any day." Joseph was listening to every word from across the table. "I can only do Wednesday this week because of cross country, but you could come to my house after practice one day if you want to, Raymond didn't say anything. How would he get to Lexi's house? Raymond thought about what Stiggs had said at the river about missing opportunities, but unless she lived within a 5-mile radius of the school, he wasn't likely to be able to walk there and back, and he certainly didn't have the money for bus fare. But he couldn't explain that to Lexi. "Yeah, maybe," he said, and Lexi's face fell just a little. "Okay," she said quietly. "We can always just meet in the library if you want." "What's the matter, Raymond? Your parents not have a car?" Joseph asked, interrupting. Raymond didn't even look at him. "The library is fine," Lexi whispered, and she smiled, trying to show Raymond that Joseph didn't matter. "Wednesday, then?" Raymond nodded. "I'll be there." Raymond was quiet all through art. Joseph's words were still ringing in his ears. What had he been thinking? Did he think he would actually be able to have a normal friendship with Lexi? One where he went to her house and they hung out somewhere other than school? He couldn't exactly invite her over to his house. He couldn't even call her. Nothing about Raymond's life was normal. Harlan could tell Raymond was in a bad mood, and he tried to cheer him up. "Maybe you, Lexi, me, and Samantha could all go to a movie together sometime," he asked. The suggestion only made Raymond more upset. "No, Harlan, just leave it alone, okay?" Raymond snapped. At the end of class, Raymond left without saying goodbye. Raymond's mood didn't improve the next day or the next. Mr. Brewer gave another pop quiz, and Raymond was sure he failed it. Mr. Rosen assigned them group work in science, and Lexi asked Raymond if he wanted to work together. Raymond shook his head and worked alone. Joseph piped up that he needed a partner, and Lexi grudgingly agreed. Raymond tried to block out their conversation, but Joseph kept bringing up their dance. Raymond finally closed his book and moved to another table. Raymond considered not even going to the library on Wednesday afternoon, but when the time came, he did go, sitting down quietly across from Lexi. He heard a laugh from behind him, and he turned to see Joseph sitting at a nearby table with one of his friends. They were glaring at Raymond. Raymond rolled his eyes and turned back to Lexi. "Did I do something, Raymond?" She looked hurt as she searched his face. Raymond's mood shifted immediately. He'd never wanted to do anything to make Lexi feel bad, and he suddenly felt ashamed of his behavior that week. "No," he said and sighed. "I'm sorry. I guess I'm just preoccupied." She nodded, looking at Joseph. She twiddled her pencil. "He's a jerk," she said. "Just ignore him. He's been that way since kindergarten." Raymond tried to smile, but it was unconvincing. "You know, we don't have to do this today," she said, looking at her math book. "I already bombed the quiz anyway. We could do something else." "Like what?" Raymond asked. She thought for a minute and then said, "Miss Amber got a new projector last week. We could watch a movie or something." Raymond raised an eyebrow. Miss Amber was nowhere in sight. He hadn't known Lexi to be a rule-breaking, and he was pretty sure that watching a movie in the library was against the rules. "Come on." She closed her book and stood up. "I'll show you." Raymond followed Lexi to a little room in the back of the nonfiction section. "I helped her set it up last week. She won't mind." She flipped on the lights. The room looked like it was being used for more for storage than anything else. Books were stacked high, and there were papers scattered on the floor. The projector looked clean and new, out of place in the dingy room. Lexi found a stack of DVDs on a shelf. "There aren't many choices. I don't even know many of these." Raymond walked over and looked at the options. There was only one title that he recognized, and he pulled it from the shelf. "The Outsiders?" Lexi asked. Raymond shrugged. "I like the book." "Okay," she said, cheerfully taking the case. "The Outsiders it is." She popped the DVD in, and the projector screen lit up. She turned the overhead lights off and sat down on an old beanbag chair across from the screen. She gestured for Raymond to sit too. He pulled a library chair with a loose back from the corner and sat down next to her. In the light of the screen, Lexi's face had an eerie blue glow. "He kind of reminds me of you," she said. "Which one?" "The quiet one, Johnny." Raymond kept his eyes on Lexi when he answered. "How about the red-haired girl then? Cherry, she kind of looks like you." He smiled when Lexi rolled her eyes. "Everybody thinks redheads look the same." They were about half an hour into the movie when the door opened and the lights switched on. "What are you two doing back here?" It was Miss Amber. Joseph was standing behind her, smirking. "We were just watching a movie," Lexi said sweetly, shrugging. "I didn't think you'd mind." Miss Amber looked from Lexi to Raymond. She was a short woman with wavy blonde hair. She wore black-rimmed glasses and high-heeled shoes every day. "Well, I would at least like to be asked first, Lexi. You know better than that." "I'm sorry, Miss Amber," Raymond said. "It was my idea." Joseph made a noise behind Miss Amber. "Get back to work." She snapped at him. "But you heard me," she said, shooing him out of the room. Then she looked back to Lexi and Raymond. "You two also. The library is closing in 15 minutes. They did as they were told, going back to their table. Raymond smiled at Lexi. "She won't mind, huh?" Lexi gave him an innocent look. He laughed. After a minute, Raymond said, "I'd better go." He didn't want to have to make up another excuse for not getting picked up. "Okay, maybe when cross country is over, we will have more time to study." "How's that going anyway?" Raymond asked. Lexi rolled her eyes. "Oh, we have a meet coming up and I'm about the slowest on the team," she said. "I just don't have that kind of stamina. I should have tried out for volleyball instead of running, but I'm not that coordinated either." "That's not true," Raymond said. "I've seen you dance, remember?" "I haven't seen you dance, though," she said quietly. "I was going to ask you," Raymond started. Lexi was determinedly looking at the book in front of her. "But Joseph got there first." She looked up. "That's okay," she said and shrugged. "There will be other dances." Raymond thought that if he ever had another chance to ask Lexi to dance, boy, he would take it.